As of today, the Grizzlies do have that number 16 pick, and you just never know what will occur on draft night. But the energy at this point seems to lead towards the Grizzlies being interested in being able to use that 16th pick to hopefully find a piece that adds into their equation of upgrading this offseason. Who are the names that you are most focused on going into tomorrow's draft that you think could be of most help for the Grizzlies?
Well, those names, have kind of, been within that five, whoever's available or projected to be available anywhere from 12 to 20. And there's some names in there. It just depends on how the Grizzlies want to address some of those needs. So when you look at where they are right now, to me, their most pressing need is for a big. It's for another big, a guy that can rebound, set screens, block shots, and be a presence. Not just because Zach Edey's going to miss the beginning of the season, but because they needed that anyway in terms of depth. So if they go in that direction, I mean, there are a couple of names that could be there from that situation. The Frenchman Maxime Reynal is a guy that jumps up, the Stanford center who can shoot, who can block shots, who shoots threes really well. Offensive guy gets downhill. He's one of the names that is floated in that range. If you want to get a wing, and the Grizzlies have always talked about, trying to add wings and shooters with some length and some size that could be defensive presence on both ends of the floor, defensive presence and also an offensive presence. So you got a couple of guys in there as well. Nate Clifford, Colorado State, is a veteran, older kind of guy. They're not paging for me, but he's an older guy from Colorado State who can do a little bit of everything. A Swiss Army knife kind of guy from there. And then if you want to go in the backcourt with some shooters, those are some options there too. So those are some names that have come up, and we'll see where they land. And whoever drops, there's always a guy that's going to drop from the top 10 into the mid-teens. And there's always, you got to take the best available in that situation.
I certainly understand the need for another big, and particularly with the status of Zach Edey going into next season. So that case can absolutely be made. I think what gets tricky is you can make a case for multiple positions. And if you want to look at getting a 3-and-D wing, because you did lose a significant amount of three-point shooting with Desmond Bane getting traded to the Orlando Magic. And I know the hope is that KCP reverts to a better shooter than what he was last year for the Magic, and his numbers improved on the latter portion of that season, but still it was a bit of a disappointing fallout. Obviously, you get a really solid defensive player in KCP. However, what that means from productivity at the three-point line in a league that gets more and more three-point heavy feels like something that is an important thing to address. So that's where I'm curious, Mike, for you. Obviously, everybody still, this time of year, gets focused on what trades can be made. So if there were to be a trade that were to make sense that could involve this number 16 pick, what are some of the factors around that you think could ultimately move the needle for this Grizzlies front office if they were to go off of that pick and look for something else?
Well, I think some of these things have to be, multi-team trades. You got to see if you can get in and maybe be the third or fourth team that gets into the mix for a major trade. What we've seen so far is two major trades happen that only involve two teams, right? Like Desmond Bane going to Orlando was a 1-to-1 deal in terms of the Orlando Magic and the Memphis Grizzlies. Kevin Durant going to Houston was a 1-to-1 transaction. Phoenix and Houston from that standpoint. Usually when guys of that magnitude or names of that magnitude are getting traded, even the one that came out this morning or last night, between Boston and Portland with Drew Holiday going to Portland, that's a 1-to-1 deal. Usually those kind of deals involve two or three teams sometimes, three or four teams sometimes, and that hasn't happened. So the Grizzlies will have to identify a team that sees a player that they really want, a younger, team that really wants to build through the lottery, and then they're willing to come up off of a piece that you really need. So that's why I've always been a proponent of the NBA adopting the NFL style. Go free agency first and then do the draft. Open free agency first, and then you can allow your teams to address those more pressing needs with their salary space, their salary caps, and those kind of things, and then make the draft secondary after that, because who's pretty much on the board in the draft at that point. But free agency is such a fluid situation. I think if it was the other way around, like the NFL does it, it would be more advantageous to a team like the Grizzlies. I will say this, I was on a conference call yesterday with Bobby Marks from ESPN and Jonathan Givony, and those guys said the Grizzlies are in a precarious position because they can literally go either way. They can go to a complete retool and rebuild, and stockpile these young assets and these draft picks that they have and go in that direction, or they can pivot out of it really quickly and say, you know what, let's take advantage of this trade opportunity, use these assets, and then get a veteran. I think they're going to do more of the latter, and they're going to be opportunistic in this draft tonight, tomorrow. Zach Kleiman always makes trades, man. He hasn't let a draft go by without making some kind of draft day deal. I think that trend continues tomorrow.